The tour begins. A view of the Forum.
Our tour begins at the triumphal arch known as the Arch of Titus, located at the east end of the long valley known as the Forum. Of the various entrances to the Forum, this is the one nearest the Colosseum and the Colosseo metro stop. Rick?
From the Arch of Titus, look out over the rubble-littered valley of the Forum and imagine Rome at its peak. This was the center of ancient Rome. The hill in the distance with the bell tower is Capitol Hill. Immediately to your left with all the trees is Palatine Hill. The valley in between is rectangular, running roughly east to west, from the Colosseum behind you up to Capitol Hill, far ahead. The rocky path at your feet is the Via Sacra, which runs through the trees, past the large brick Senate building, under another triumphal arch at the far end, and up Capitol Hill. Picture being here when a conquering general returned to Rome with crates of booty. The valley was full of gleaming white marble buildings topped with bronze roofs. The Via Sacra, main street of the Forum, would be lined with citizens, waving branches and carrying torches. The trumpets would sound as the parade began. First came porters carrying chests full of gold and jewels. Then, a parade of exotic animals from conquered lands. Elephants, giraffes, hippopotamuses, all for the crowd to ooh and awe at. Next came the prisoners in chains, with the captive king on a wheeled platform, so people could jeer and spit at him. Finally, the conquering hero himself would drive down in his four-horse chariot, with rose petals strewn in his path. The whole procession would run the length of the Forum and up the face of Capitol Hill to the Temple of Saturn. That's the 8 big columns midway up the hill. They'd place the booty in Rome's treasury. Then they'd continue up to the summit to the Temple of Jupiter. You can't see the Temple of Jupiter from here because only ruins of its foundation remain. Meeting the priests at the temple, they'd dedicate their victory to the King of the Gods. Conquest by conquest, Rome grew from a small band of tribespeople huddled in this valley to an empire stretching all across Europe. The wealth of that far-flung empire flowed inward to the city of Rome.
Now, turn your attention to the big white arch next to you.
The Arch of Titus. This triumphal arch commemorated the Roman victory over the province of Judea, or Israel, in 70 A.D. The Romans had a reputation as benevolent conquerors who tolerated the local customs. All they required was allegiance to the empire, shown by worshipping the emperor as a god. No problem for most conquered people, who already had half a dozen gods on their prayer list anyway. But the Jews of Israel believed in only one god, and it wasn't the emperor. Israel revolted. After a short but bitter war, the Romans defeated the rebels, took Jerusalem, sacked their temple, and brought home 50,000 Jewish slaves. They were forced to build this arch, which celebrates their defeat. Now, walk right up underneath the arch. Roman propaganda decorates the inside of the arch. Check it out. A relief shows the Emperor Titus in a chariot being crowned by the goddess Victory. Thanks to modern pollution, they both look like they've been through the wars. The other side shows booty from the sacking of the temple in Jerusalem. Soldiers carry off a precious Jewish menorah and other plunder. The 2 plaques on the poles are unfinished. They were to have listed the conquered cities. Look at the relief at the top of the ceiling. It shows Titus, after his death, riding an eagle to heaven, where he'll become one of the gods. The brutal crushing of the Jewish rebellion in 70 A.D., and another one 60 years later, devastated the nation of Israel. With no temple as a center for their faith, the Jews scattered throughout the world, the diaspora. There would be no Jewish political entity again for almost 2,000 years, until modern Israel was created after World War II.
Walk down the Via Sacra into the Forum. After about 50 yards, turn right and follow a path uphill to the 3 huge arches of the Basilica of Constantine. As you walk, listen while Rick gives a thumbnail history of the people who constructed the Forum. We'll see you at the 3 big arches.
Rome in a nutshell. The story of ancient Rome spans about 1,000 years, from 500 BC to 500 AD. In a nutshell, it rose for 500 years, peaked for 200 years, and declined for 300 years. The first half was the Republic, ruled by an aristocracy via their elected senators. The second half was the Empire, ruled by a no-nonsense dictator or emperor. Right from the start, war was the business of state. Rome expanded until eventually it controlled most of Western Europe and the entire Mediterranean Sea. The word Rome came to refer to the civilized world itself, and the Mediterranean was known as Mare Nostrum, our sea. About the time of Christ, the vast Roman Empire was too unwieldy to be ruled in the idealistic republic style. They needed an iron-fisted dictator backed by the military. Julius Caesar bridged the gap between republic and empire. This ambitious general and politician assumed dictatorial powers in about 50 BC, suspending the republic. Though he was assassinated, more on that later, his adopted son, Augustus, succeeded him, and soon Caesar was not just a family name, but a title. Emperor Augustus ushered in the Pax Romana, or Roman peace, from about 1 AD to the year 200. At her peak, Rome controlled an empire that stretched even beyond Ural, from Scotland to Egypt, from Spain all the way to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in modern-day Iraq.
Stand and admire the 3 huge arches of the Basilica of Constantine, getting a sense of the grandeur of Rome in its prime.